I'm Roy Pumphrey. I speak for Stop Hinkley, and Stop Hinkley does exactly what it says. Its aim is to put a stop to the development of nuclear power stations at Hinkley Point in Somerset. And so far, so good. 2 down, 1 to go.
How do you mean 2 down, 1 to go?
Well, the A station's long gone, the B station's about to close, and C station, well, they may never get it running.
Why do you say that?
Well, because they're delayed. They are now desperately trying to take on extra staff because, not just because of COVID, although that's the line that most people accept on it, but because they are running behind schedule for other reasons, and they are desperate to finish at the latest by 2029, because if they don't do that, the very beneficial deal they struck with the government for the price of electricity, that falls, and they have to renegotiate something else. And I bet my bottom dollar it won't be anything like as generous as the deal they struck back along.
What do you make of the Extinction Rebellion types and the Scottish Greens now as well, by the way, who say we need to keep nuclear going, actually, for reasons of carbon neutrality?
It's not an argument that holds any water as far as I'm concerned. And I'm never quite sure if Extinction Rebellion have a line that they all adhere to anyway. I've seen various people who claim to represent Extinction Rebellion who are pro-nuclear and others less so.
Yeah, but the argument is very simple, isn't it? We've got to get rid of the fossil fuels, but we do need to have some sort of robust, high power generation out there. If we're going to get rid of the fossil fuel generation and coal, etc., there's got to be something in the background. We can't just totally rely on solar and wind. And you'd have to agree with that, surely.
No, I don't. The technology that supports wind and solar, when the wind doesn't blow as much as you'd hope it would, and the sun certainly doesn't shine as much as you'd like it to, is already well on the way to becoming fully developed. And the very fact that the government is pressing for electric vehicles to replace petrol and diesel ones indicates that that's another benefit, because a car with a battery can also put electricity into the grid as well as taking it from it. There are already charging points for electric cars, which will, they'll be looking at the economics of it as well as whether you actually want to use the car. Clearly, they can't take it from you when you're doing 60 on the motorway, but when you're tethered to a charging point, they can make an economic evaluation of whether it's better for you to be letting electricity go from the battery into the grid as opposed to taking it out to charge the battery in the car.
Oh, come on. Surely the cars are using the power. They're not generating it. They're the ones that are having to plug in order to, your car's going to run out pretty soon. You're going to get down the road. It's going to conk out if you're not taking energy from that grid and sticking it in the car.
Yeah, ideally you'll be doing that at night when the wind tends to blow and nobody's making much use of electricity, which is exactly what nuclear power is doing, because the spot market for electricity really suits nuclear, because they've got to tick over. But when electricity is at its most expensive during the day at around lunchtime, they're rubbing their hands and taking and generating and taking an enormous amount of electricity of money for the electricity they generate them, and ticking over during the night when there isn't a demand. But electric cars.
Sorry, this clock that's ticking over the price of electricity from Hinkley, that sounds like an interesting one, because everybody knows that's looked into it at all that people are going to be paying through the nose from electricity from Hinkley, and it's all going to be subsidised by the government. And there's obviously no free market here whatsoever. It's a massive subsidised system. Yeah. When is that clock ticking down? So how long have they got until they've got to get the thing going?
2029.
Is there any chance that they all hit or miss that?
Well, there's every chance they'll miss it because the only the only reactors of this type, the pressurized water reactors that they've developed, that they've got to work, is in China, and that cannot be going as well as they might have hoped, because otherwise we'd have heard a lot more about it. But as it is, whenever anybody from EDF pipes up, they never mention the Chinese connection, and what they're stuck with is reactors in Finland and France, which they still haven't got to work, which are years and years and years behind schedule, and have cost many times their estimated initial estimated cost. And Hinkley C is already, when I first went to a meeting about Hinkley C, the figure that the EDF was spinning at the time was 8 billion. The Times were the first people to say it would be 12. Then it went up to 18, and now it's more like 23. And EDF now admit that that's the case. They never denied the figures as they were sailing up. Everybody's forgotten that the original estimate was £8 billion. And when EDF announced that new nuclear was an option, then they talked about having it completed by 2017, which was a pure pipe dream. And it clearly hasn't turned out like that. They've already got a 6-month delay. They're likely to have at least another 6 months. That was before COVID. They're likely to have at least another 6-month delay because of COVID. And they are desperately throwing workers at it in a last-ditch attempt to get it finished before they have to start reconsidering the price they can charge for electricity.
Oh, that's it sounds a bit like HS2 with these constant amounts of money going up and up and up. Anyway, there's been this report out this week about the collapse of some gigantic silo. Can you just tell us when that happened and what the results of the report are?
Yeah, well, that's very straightforward. At about 7 a.m. on the 10th of June last year, 2020, there was an almighty crash out at the site. Some people just off site who heard it thought it was an explosion, but it was in fact just the sound of 4,000 tons of granulated slag, which is a blast furnace byproduct, waste product that can be used to make the sort of concrete that they want at Hinkley C. And there were 4,000 tons in this particular silo. And at 7 a.m., it just collapsed, and all the 4,000 tons of slag hit the ground with an almighty crunch, and the top caved in as well. It created a vacuum, and I think the crack was the sound of the top half of the silo imploding as the bottom exploded and the slag all hit the ground. So that was what happened. They were very, very fortunate because work around that silo doesn't start till 7:30 a.m. So whilst there were no injuries or fatalities, it was just pure chance that didn't happen. We've waited until the 13th of May this year for any indication what had actually happened, and what we've got is a report that poses as many questions as it supplies answers. There's some vague stuff about the temperature, the air temperature, the days before the silo collapsed. That's supposed to have some significance in the collapse, and some bolts.
Oh, it's because they didn't realise that the summer was going to be warm.
Apparently not. Apparently May last year was tropical in Cannington, at Hinkley Point, and we never noticed it. It was warm, but what concerns us is we've got no indication that anything about this silo, the design, the the components, the construction, and the operation. Well, the operation is not quite the same, but everything up to that, all that's involved in getting to a silo that's there ready to work, conforms with the standards that everything that's built these days has to conform to. Because this silo, interestingly, is unique. It's gone. Was unique to Hinkley C. No one else had ever had one like it. It's still not clear why they wanted one this particular way, because none of the others are built like this. And now it's turned out to have been a costly folly, basically, and potentially a very dangerous, collapsing, costly folly. So, all in all, and the explanation they've given to the Office for Nuclear Regulation is slim, small beer, really, in terms of a valid explanation for what happened. So all in all, that's pretty disappointing. Interestingly, I was at a meeting last Thursday evening where EDF, what they call the Community Forum, which is for interested local bodies and individuals. Anyone can go along and listen to what EDF have to say and ask questions. On Zoom, that's rather more difficult. But there was an Office for Nuclear Regulation, a regulator inspector, the man who's responsible for overseeing what happens at Hinkley C. He was there last Thursday night, and he said that the designer made a mistake. And, that sort of slipped in. It wasn't anything that EDF said, but it was what the regulator's representative on the night slipped into the conversation. And that was interesting. EDF, I suspect EDF maybe potentially are being less forthcoming, either because they're really not clear what happened and why it happened, or there may be legal issues that they want to pursue, and they think they're playing clever by being economical with their explanation of what's actually happened. But all in all, it's pretty unsatisfactory.
I do wonder if, we've got all this massive security around there. That also means, of course, there's little or no proper scrutiny.
Well, that's our concern, that EDF, in their desperate rush to get things going, there is the possibility or likelihood that they've played fast and loose with this silo design. One thing they did say was that there are construction, design and management regulations which govern items like this silo. And the impression I got from the woman who spoke last Thursday was that they have changed since the silo was designed and constructed. So you wouldn't build another one like it now. Now, that to me has all the whiff of the Grenfell Tower situation, where the cladding that was put on Grenfell was both wrong and not too long after the time was realised to be wrong, but no one's got around to doing anything. And that's like that for countless tower blocks all over the country, but no one's got around to doing anything about it until the disaster at Grenfell.
Well, there's another thing, and that is that, well, this is only just an incident in part of the construction. What's going to happen when they turn the power station on?
Well, exactly, I mean, which they, as I've said, they've singularly failed to do in Finland and in France, where, when they started on Hinkley, they said they would learn from the mistakes of Flamanville, the French reactor, that they still haven't got to work. I mean, part of what happened in France is scandalous, because there were falsified records about the purity of the steel that was going into the reactor shield, which is a absolutely critical part of the build, and the records about the purity and integrity of that steel were falsified, knowingly falsified. And that's all had to be taken apart and replaced. And, the whole thing is not good. Well, it's scandalous. if it wasn't being done by the French government, no private company would ever get another contract. But that's basically where we are. We've got something that's being built by a combination of the French state and the Chinese state, and in their haste to get on with things, I've reached the stage where I'm crossing my fingers about the. Well, I don't think it will actually work, but I've also fingers crossed about the safety of it, because one thing that the nation has learnt from watching the Chernobyl television drama program is that the guys that caused the explosion at Chernobyl weren't doing anything that they regarded as reckless. They were carrying out a health and safety test that went horribly wrong. They were doing something that they thought was just a test, and they were only too happy to go along with it because they thought it was okay. They thought all the components of the plant were built to withstand the rigor of the test, and as it turned out, that wasn't the case. And what's more, some people elsewhere in the Soviet nuclear industry knew that it wasn't the case, but it went ahead anyway.
Well, look, you're called Stop Hinkley, but you're not actually stopping Hinkley. Last time I was down in Bridgewater, there's hundreds of these buses, the white buses, every few minutes, zipping backwards and forwards down the road. There seems to be
empty.
more activity than ever down. Well, empty buses, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did you not look on board them, Tony? There's nobody on them. Most of the time, those buses run empty.
Well, what are they for? What's going on with them?
Well, they are shuttling. Okay, they have to keep a certain number they shuttle a lot to and fro. All right, there are in the region of allegedly 4,000 odd people working there at the moment. Okay,
there seems to be that many buses almost. There's loads and loads of buses going in.
Well, COVID restrictions mean that the buses can't run at capacity. So the best you'll see is at best, as far as EDF are concerned, a half full bus. But they clog up the roads because there are so many of them trying to get a reduced but still several £1,000 workforce out to the site with reduced capacity buses.
Okay, Roy, whereabouts do people come to find Stop Hinkley? And also, I'm quite interested in these public consultations. Do they do any face-to-face ones, or are these all at the distance of a Zoom call?
Well, you can find us through our website, Tony, or obviously by phoning, and you can contact us by email and through the website.
Okay, what is your website?
stophinkley.org.
Okay, and what about these public meetings that the EDF hold? They sound quite interesting too.
Okay, you'll need to apply to attend, but the community forum in particular, EDF have recently said is for anybody who particularly wants to attend, and currently they are by Zoom, although it would be nice to go back to a face-to-face meeting, because that does give the opportunity to have a more to and fro discussion with people when they bring up points which are controversial. But at the moment they are Zoom, and really, if people get in touch with the Hinkley C part of EDF, they'll be guided as to how they can get to attend one.
Okay, Roy Pumphrey from Stop Hinkley, thanks very much for joining us again.
That's okay, Tony. Thank you.